down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on vinyl and vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 125. Today's very special guest is Kerry Jones. Kerry is a very talented singer, guitarist, and songwriter with the band Death Doula from Portland, Oregon. So Death Doula is a fairly new band, and they have just released their debut full-length album called Love Spells. It is a self-released album. Nothing wrong with that. Most people are going that route these days because who needs a label? But it's a great album. And now I got turned on to it because I get sent albums fairly regularly by a couple of publicists primarily, and this one was sent to me, and I started to listen to it, and I kept on listening to it. Now, if you're a music fan and you know anything about music, if you put something on for the first time that you don't know, and you start listening to it and you don't stop listening to it, it's probably because you like it. It's probably because there's something about it that grabs you and that is making you want to hear what comes next. And for music fans, that is compelling. So what I'm trying to tell you is I think you should listen to this album, give it a shot, see if it does the same thing for you. It is currently streaming everywhere music is available. You can also buy a physical copy or a digital copy. I believe they're only on CD right now. I will provide links in the show notes for you to do that. Try it out. I mean, I considered it to have this goth shoegaze vibe to it. Kerry referred to it as art rock. I think that's accurate too. It's cool. It's just a little. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's got it has obvious mix of influences going on there, and so it's cool. I really liked it. So. And that's why I wanted to speak with her. Turns out that they recorded that album at Jackpot Studios, and a gentleman by the name of Adam Lee recorded it. He was the engineer. I guess he's worked with some bigger names like Built to Spill and Sleater Kinney, to name a couple. So it's a very good sounding record as well. Very, very professionally executed. So what I do here is I talk to artists about albums that are important and influential to them. And, Kerry's choice was Tori Amos's From the Choirgirl Hotel. I am not familiar with Tori Amos very well. I mean, I know who she is and I know some of her songs, but I am not a fan. I never really listened to any of her albums in their entirety. So this one was particularly difficult. If you know it, then maybe you know why, and maybe you can see why I would have some aversion to it. But yeah, I got into the details, I got into the research, and it was difficult, very layered, very complex, very complicated. It's a fucking masterpiece, but as far as being an idiot trying to analyze music, very hard. Not for lack of information. Usually it's the opposite for me. Usually I can't find enough information. This, way too much. So I did the best I could, and I hope you can enjoy it. And if you do, all that I ask is that you please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of those things. They help us out immensely. They cost you nothing. It's great. If you care to help us out in a financial way, you can always visit our website, psychostatic.net, and make a purchase there of anything that's on the website. All of it goes towards funding this little shindig here, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for that in advance. And without further ado, here's the show. Kerry Jones, how are you?
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I think I'm okay.
You look
Um,
great.
Thank you. You do too.
Thank you. Yay, you sound good too.
Yeah, I think I found the problem.
Hell yeah. Great
Yeah,
job.
thanks. We won't get into that embarrassing involvement now. Let's dive right in, right? Considering
Okay.
we lost a little bit of time. Where can you just tell me again about, how you were born and raised?
Yeah. Um, Born in Fairfax, Virginia, lived in Manassas, Virginia, Northern Virginia for like 7.5 years. Dad got a job at the Nevada test site for nuclear weapons. We moved
Hmm.
to Las Vegas, lived in Desert Shores, shout out, um, for the next like 8 years. My parents got divorced when I was 15. Mom and I moved to Charlottesville, Virginia. She still lives there. I graduated from high school there. Dad moved to San Francisco and then Seattle and then the Oregon coast, which is where he still lives. So he's like a three
Hmm.
and a half hour drive from me here in Portland. And I go visit him and my stepmom Mary like once every couple months.
Yeah.
And
Um,
then after high school, I studied art at UGA in Athens, Georgia. So got like 5.5 years of like super deep Southern inspiration and influence, and then
hmm.
moved to New York City promptly upon graduating and lived there for like 10 years. So I've
Okay.
kind of got like all over the country accent influence and
Right.
culture influence.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting how transient you've been. But so now, how did you end up in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, I kind of was feeling like pushed out of the city, like definitely had been there for a long time, had left a couple times and always come back. Sometimes when you're in New York, it just feels like where else would I possibly be?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you kind of get like so spoiled by it being a walking city and having restaurants and shops and bars and like every service and product and experience possible on
Hmm.
planet Earth. Like I feel like in a lot of other cities, people get really like relaxed and at home and complacent, maybe, just like living in a sort of a relaxing, passive way. And in New York, you can't live like that. It's very
Hmm.
not relaxing.
Yeah.
um,
It's
People are just
supercharged all
like,
day.
I'm here, I am here. And what am I going to do with this like incredibly challenging, hard life that I have here, which is really inspiring and exciting.
Hmm.
It's a little tricky for the nervous system, but I definitely got to a point where like professionally I was feeling kind of pushed out of the city. Like opportunities in my field, I'm a private chef, weren't kind of coming in the way that I wanted them to, and nothing was feeling like the right fit.
Hmm.
I'd stepped away from like an unfortunate business professional relationship, and yeah, I just came to Portland to visit a friend, and I'd been here a couple times before. We worked this cute little festival that happens here called Pickathon. Shout out Pickathon. I've worked Pickathon now two, but maybe three, but worked the instrument locker. And it's such a cool experience. You just camp on the land. There's this like farm and gigantic wooded area in Happy Valley. And they have like dozens of acts come from all over the world. And it's really, really rad. So I did that with her and was just like, oh, I really like it here.
Hmm.
And like I was single at the time, hopped on the apps and like met this really like hot, tall guy who was a guitar player. And like we had this like intense, like couple day little fling thing, which made me feel like, there's like potential for romance here. And
Hmm.
then I actually like went back to New York and like hopped online and just looked up if there were private chefs here and wrote to some of them and said like, yo, is there any chance you have like a waiting list of clients that you can't work with because you're one person and you're busy? And I got some responses and I got basically like a full workload
Hmm.
from that, them passing off clients that they couldn't work with to me. So I just like drove across the country like within the month
Hmm.
and started cooking for clients here. So that's kind of
Wow.
how it happened. It was just like 6 months before the pandemic went down. So it was a pretty weird time.
Okay. So you haven't been there very long. You've been there a total of 4 years, 5 years now.
5 years, yeah. 5 years, like right now. This
Cool.
is about the time of year I moved here. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So let's see. So that was a lot of information. You did a lot of moving. You've been like all over the country for your life. I think you're younger than I am. Are you in your 30s?
I'm 40. I
Oh,
turned
okay.
40 last January.
All right. I was just trying to process the whole college timeline thing and being 10 years in New York. It's like, okay. So, well, let's go back to your childhood. So you lived with your parents for the first few years. Like what do you remember about like, music in the household as a kid?
My memories are mostly of like the late 80s, early 90s in terms of like my like first few potent memories
Hmm.
um musically, and a lot of like really unoffensive like soft rock was played like in my mom's car. Um and I think there's a lot of like goodness to some of that stuff, but some of it like you won't find me listening to
Sure.
it like ever again. And my dad was kind of more into like what's now considered classic rock, but was then, I don't even know what it was called, rock.
Like new wave maybe?
Uh,
Like it's still kind of popular music, like stuff you'd find on MTV or the radio.
Less cool than that. Yeah, the radio, yeah, like the Eagles,
Okay.
America, like Simon and Garfunkel. Like my dad
Yeah.
didn't like Neil Young, but like Neil Young adjacent stuff, but like
Okay.
softer.
Yeah.
And then he got into country, new country, like 90s country. And
Oh,
so, and
and
my
we
dad's a guitarist. So
okay.
he went to conservatory and, studied classical guitar.
Oh, so he's like a
And
legit musician too.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. He kind of took a little break from playing when I was young. He was doing like the government job thing.
Hmm.
And now in his 70s, he's like 73, 74. He's playing in multiple bands and playing like multiple nights a week. But all his projects have always been covers.
Yeah.
So he's really good at like learning a song and like reciting the song.
Hmm.
He tried to teach me keyboard. That was the first like instrument that I really dove into. I was like 5 or 6, and I was just too young and too disinterested in learning from my dad in the way that he was teaching, and it didn't really stick.
Yeah.
But then I picked up trumpet in middle school, played that for a few years, and then didn't get into guitar until high school.
Okay. Now, it sounds like you didn't have a lot, like the crazy amount of exposure. I mean, for having a musician parent, your mom didn't do any music at all?
No.
Okay, so it was just like your dad primarily. He's like the kind of the music guy in the house, and he didn't really expose you to a lot of stuff. It doesn't seem like it was kind of just kind of mainstream music.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of listening to the radio.
So I'm kind of curious, so when did music hit you? I mean, like when did you feel like you found some kind of connection to music?
Middle school, well, like always, always, always.
You
But
always liked it.
yeah, like I remember being a little girl, being I've always been a light sleeper and I needed like white noise to fall asleep.
Hmm.
And what that functioned as when I was very young, so in that first house, so like under like 7 and younger, right, was the radio. And so the radio would be on like a light rock station, and sometimes I would like cry from the songs.
Hmm.
And I would like run downstairs and like I have distinct memories of being like so moved to tears by a chord progression that I would run downstairs and be like sad and in my mom's arms
Hmm.
or my dad's arms.
So it wasn't even the vocal, it
So
was actually the legit music that really brought you to tears.
maybe sometimes it was the lyric. Yeah, like
Okay.
Phil Collins was around in my house a lot, Genesis and solo Phil. And Phil was just everywhere, in the early 90s and late 80s,
Yeah.
like all the radio stations that
Oh yeah.
my family listened to, tons and tons of Phil. Phil seems like one of the most like literally my uncle people that I've never met, like in the whole
Hmm.
world, like because he's just been with me my whole life in this weird way.
Hmm. Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
and then I have a memory of like singing along to songs in my mom's car and staring out the window so like she wouldn't hear me because I didn't know if I was doing it right and I didn't think that I could do it right. Like that didn't seem possible. How is
Hmm.
it possible that I can sing just like Janet Jackson or the girls in Wilson Phillips?
Yeah.
That's not, that can't be. So I would like kind of do it so that like I was not singing toward her, so I wasn't projecting her way. I was like projecting out.
You were singing out the window and the wind would carry it away.
Yeah, vibes. But then I made a ton of mixtapes in middle school. So this was Las Vegas now. And that room and that boombox, I had a great Sony boombox and it had a 6 disc changer and it
Mm,
had a solo cassette deck on the top and then radio. So I would like, sometimes I would call the radio station and be
hmm.
like, yo, play Snoop or no, Shoop. Who was
Oh,
that by?
Salt and Pepper.
Salt and Pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like play Right Here by SWV. Like get my favorite songs requested
Hmm.
and hit record
So wait,
and
so
just make this
yeah.
custom playlist.
Oh yeah, I mean, we used to record fucking stuff off the radio all the time. I mean, there was like,
Yeah.
especially as poor people, like I was a poor kid growing up, so I mean,
Yeah.
like listening to the radio and trying to like, start the tape deck, like when you hear that song coming on, because
Yeah.
you want to be able to hear it again at your leisure as opposed to waiting for the
Yeah.
fucking radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was big. But so from what you just said, it sounds like you had a lot of kind of R&B stuff going
Mm,
on in your middle school age.
I really did. Yeah. And I just still love R&B, hip hop and like the sort of electronic, like synth based and beat based framework for something to reside inside of. So that
Mm,
like kind of morphed into like a love of trip hop when I got a little bit older, maybe like college years and like getting into Massive Attack and Portishead and
hmm.
Tricky. Yeah, and even like Radiohead has had like little fits and starts with, I mean, I feel like they are like pretty much an electronic based band, at the core. I don't know
Hmm.
that I would call what they do really hip hop, but
Yeah.
there's definitely like trip hop leaning songs in
Sure.
their
Now more so than
discography.
ever, like their later period work is definitely more electronic based. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I guess just the 90s were, filled to the brim with like really good sort of ubiquitous like mainstream artists that were doing like a hip hop sound.
Yeah.
It feels like the 90s kind of brought in like hip hop as mainstream in a new way. And so I
Yeah.
was listening to the stations that did um all of these like really vocally skilled female leads with harmonies and with maybe like multiple singers and I was doing like all the parts and I basically would make these mixtapes and then just sing the whole thing.
Hmm. Sure.
Yeah. It was so
So that
fun
was
for
kind of
me.
like your practice. That was kind of like your introduction to learning to sing, or
Yeah, I would say so. And Sade, my own tapes that I would get at like yard sales and thrift stores. Sade, Janet Jackson, like I said, Wilson Phillips. I got the first Tori Amos record, Little Earthquakes, pretty young. Um, I didn't buy it new, but she was kind of like a later investigation for me. She wasn't in that first era.
you mean not in middle school?
Right.
So wait, so you got little earthquakes when you were young, you're saying?
No, yeah, young, but older than middle school. Maybe
Okay.
like high school. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So well, so how did that land with you? Like what were you thinking about, being introduced to little earthquakes?
It kind of landed honestly like my first taste of Sonic Youth. Like, what is this? How is someone making music that sounds so different than everything else I've ever heard? And people are into it?
Hmm.
People like this? Like with Tori, it was in a like um mystifying, exciting way. I was like, whoa, so you can sing however you want. You can use breath. You can use the in-breath as a purposeful instrument.
Hmm.
Uh you can like make ugly sounds and make them sound pretty. I guess some of that was the same with the Sonic Youth, my first Sonic Youth experience. Like the first time I heard Struck by, what is it, Dirty, that has 100% is the first song.
Hmm.
I'm
I'm not sure. I'm not good with their
gonna check my work.
discography.
Oh really? Are you not really a fan?
Not really. I've tried, I've given them multiple chances. I've listened to multiple records and I just none of it sticks.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I was right. So the first Sonic Youth record I heard was Dirty, and it was burned for me by my ex-boyfriend, Ben Garland, shout out.
Shout out, Ben.
And Ben Garland was a special person in my life. I lost my virginity to him,
Uh-oh.
but
That's why it's so
also,
important.
but also he recorded shows. He would set up his gear in the middle, like back of the venue where we all know the sound is the best. And he would video and audio record shows. And he was the first
Hmm.
person that I knew that just like did that. I thought that was so cool. So he had all of these live recordings of all of these bands that we loved. And then he also had just really high quality burns of studio albums.
Hmm.
So he gave me Dirty by Sonic Youth, and I was just like, is this a joke band? Like, some of the songs are cool and sound like songs I've heard before, but some of the songs are just like so ugly on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, how can this be a thing that they're going for? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I just was totally, those two artists maybe the most out of anything else that I was exposed to.
Hmm.
Maybe like the birthday party hit in that same zone where I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is pretty ugly. This is pretty thrashy. Like, are these even like what time signature is this? Like
Right.
what key is this? Like
So these
is
are examples of artists and bands that gave you like kind of a liberty to or maybe an understanding that ugly can be accessible as well musically.
mm, I guess so. I think, yeah, the way that I would say it is they gave me liberty to explore like any and every sound and any and every way of making songs and not just like the Beatles way, which like felt like,
Hmm.
or the Phil Collins way, which felt like this is a very accessible, acceptable, like mainstream way of making music.
Yeah.
I guess like mainstream music was kind of like my biggest influence until college. And then like I didn't hear the Smiths until college. I don't know
Hmm.
how that happened. Shame on my parents. But like I remember my sophomore year of college, my roommates, I like got this really cool apartment downtown with some people and they were like, "Oh my God, you don't know the Smiths?" And I was like, no. And I remember them just like jumping on the couch and like singing every word as we listened to Smith's record. And
Hmm.
I was like,
Right.
wow, there's a lot I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like these bands maybe gave me just more like freedom in regards to like, you don't have to make it be this particular way. It can actually be kind of any way you want.
Right. Okay. So now this was early college years. You had already started playing guitar by this point, right?
Yeah, I did a little independent study in high school with guitar. So I like took some super like unhelpful lessons wherein basically the objective was like teach me covers so that I can prove that I learned guitar. It
Hmm.
was like I didn't learn how to change strings. I didn't learn how to do any
Tune.
adjustments.
Oh yeah.
I think I learned how to tune maybe, but maybe not even from him. Maybe just like figured it out. Like it's like how hard is it? You just like turn it one way or the
Yeah.
other. I've always been pretty self-sufficient. But yeah, I mean, I performed my songs and got my grade, like you know,
Performed your
was
songs
given like a pass.
yeah, as in covers that you were given like to learn.
Covers that I chose
Okay.
to present as my like independent study.
Because I'm curious, like when did you start actually writing music, or when did you start experimenting with your own composition?
Mostly college. I wrote some really like embarrassingly bad lyrics in high school and probably honestly even into middle school that I didn't really know what they would ever become, but
Hmm.
like poems.
Sure.
But Um, but college was my first band, and that was like math rock era, um, like what was happening in kind of like at least my zeitgeist in Athens, Georgia, in the like art program, visual art. I was taking art history courses, learning what the greats did, and then, learning these rules so that in our own art we could subvert them.
Hmm.
And I kind of feel like that same thing was happening to me musically, but like in a, self-led, friend-led, lover-led format. So just discovering bands and albums that were blowing my mind and exposing me to like different ways of doing music. So that was like in Athens, it was a very like math rock driven time. It felt like bands like Maserati, Cinemechanica, We versus the Shark, and my band, who was Myrtle Malloy, were doing very angular, aggressive, driving, mathy music. It
Hmm.
was really a fun time.
Yeah. And you were always guitarist.
Guitarist and vocalist.
Okay.
Yeah,
You'd
that
always,
first band was just two guitars, two vocalists. We were both gals, and then a drummer, no bass. So we
okay.
kind of like filled out all the ends with our guitars.
Yeah. And so you've always been lead singer and aspired to be lead singer?
Yeah, I always have. Yeah. That's not
Okay.
true. I did take a post in my dear friend Scotty's band, Richard Gumby. Shout out Scott. Um, just lead guitar. That was
Hmm.
really fun time. He basically had something had happened with his guitar player. They stepped down after he put out a record, and I was just getting ready to leave New York for the first time, moved down to Athens, Atlanta area, and started playing with them. But then after a while, he kind of had me start singing a song or two because he loved my voice. So
Hmm.
it always ended up creeping in, you know.
Sure. Well, when you have the ability, I mean, you use it. So your current band is Death Doula. Now, how did that come to be?
Well, I'd been playing around Athens and Atlanta, like just solo me, guitar and voice. And I'd worked with my boyfriend at the time, Jeremy Lamano, who runs Low Yo-Yo Records in Athens, Georgia. Big time shout out. Um, and he was playing drums and I was doing my thing. And we recorded a little EP. And that was right after I'd broken my wrist roller skating. So I couldn't play guitar for months because I had a huge cast up to my elbow. And I'd had a session with a death doula because I was feeling so limited in my autonomy and my range of motion. I couldn't play guitar, obviously. I couldn't work, couldn't, cook.
Hmm.
Um, and inside that session, whatever magical energy work she was doing on me, it was like a long distance phone session. I got this download that I need to just focus on my voice and like forget about the guitar for a little while. Obviously, I couldn't play it, so it was a moot point. And so I started doing these experiments with just my voice and effects and really making layers upon layers of different sounding instruments that were all just my voice.
Hmm.
And then that led me to um, kind of like finishing up some songs, and Jeremy came down and we recorded. And then I recorded something with some collaborators in New York. I moved back up there, Colin and Rob, and put out another EP with a very different sound. And then moved to Portland and collaborated with some friends here on another EP, again, a very different sound. And then met Kyle at a bar on the coast where my parents live. I was there visiting them and I had a crush on this guy who worked at a little pizzeria. And I went there one night to see him, and he was bringing me out food, and I was there by myself reading a book. And this guy at the bar who was also there by himself was talking to me. And then it turns out he knew the chef too, and we were all chatting. And um, that guy was Kyle. Kyle had Kate Bush as his like phone background, and that started a conversation. And
Hmm.
then um, he was like, "We should collaborate." And so, over the span of a couple months, we were kind of chatting. Every time I went there, we would run into each other somehow. It's a really small town, and there's no young people. It's like a retiree town, pretty much.
Oh
So he
yeah.
was just living there for the pandemic with his friend Sam. Shout out Sam! And we did collaborate on New Year's Eve, and he played me some beats, and I really liked one of them. And I just sat on his bed and handheld the mic, and I had this poem that I'd literally written about the guy that I had a crush on.
Hmm.
Um, and like First Take was all we got, and that ended up being a demo for Disembark. Disembark was the first single we put out from this record, Love Spells. So 2.5 years later, almost three. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how Death Doula like came to be, and then like its different iterations over the last several years, and then like up to the present iteration.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think the first thing I kind of wanted to ask you about Death Doula was like, are you the primary songwriter, or how does that work for the band right now?
Yeah, sometimes it's like, what is a song?
Well,
What is being a songwriter? Like, is that writing the lyrics? Is that writing the vocal melody? Is that writing the guitar melody? Is that all those things?
well, what do
We
you
talk about
do?
this inside the band a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I write my vocals. So I write
Yeah.
my poem, my
Lyrics.
whatever words I'm saying. I write my vocal melody. I write my
Hmm.
guitar melody. If I'm playing guitar on that song. Kyle and I would say, are on most songs we credit jointly as co-writers.
Hmm.
Um, the way that it works changes. It's different for every song, but Kyle and I live together, and sometimes he'll be down in the basement playing guitar, messing around, free improvising, and I'll hear something that I really like and be like, do that again. Maybe I'll record it on a voice memo
Mm.
and start working on something linking with that, and then we'll build that way. Or sometimes he's really clear on a progression and he'll present it to me, and or me and Keith, our bassist. Or like with Dirty Shirt, like I was messing around on my guitar or maybe his guitar because he plays a baritone, so it's a whole different thing.
Mm.
And like was playing some progression, and he was like, I think that's a good progression. Like, let's build off that. And then that became Dirty Shirt. It's all just different. Now he's working on beats. I think our second record is going to be, at least to some degree, a little bit more beat focused and
Mm.
incorporating the things we were talking about earlier, like synth. I mean, there's plenty of synth all over Love Spells, but like maybe incorporating synth and beats into the sound a little bit more. We
Uh,
all
Yeah.
love that.
Kind of like from the Choir Girl Hotel.
Kind of like that. Yeah. Yeah. That record has really followed me in such a profound and potent way. Like, Radiohead's always been a favorite. Portishead's always been a favorite. Queen to the Stone Age has been a favorite. I feel like PJ Harvey's been a huge influence on me. I feel like I have these groups where they're just like, I listen to them all the time from like, my youth on.
Hmm.
But that one specifically, I just listened to it the other day in preparation for our conversation. And, it keeps feeling fresh to me. Like I keep wanting to listen to it, even though I've listened to it probably more than anything else in my collection. It keeps
Mm.
feeling fresh and exciting and interesting. And I realized I'd never like looked it up, like anything about it, like researched it at all. And I did a little research, and was just so like affirmed in my feeling around the record because like when it came out, it was like her fourth studio album.
Hmm.
It was like internationally lauded. Um, she started working with a band for the first time, which became her like ongoing long-term band kind of from then on out.
Hmm.
She performed these songs live for the first time with the band. It had always just been her and like one or two pianos before that. It was a turning point for her in her career, not only like with the critics, but with her own personal like songwriting and like song sharing experience.
Yeah, very different. I
Yeah.
mean, can you tell me a little bit about that? Because so I'm not a Tori Amos fan. I did I say her name right? Amos or
Yeah.
Amos? I forget. There's some weird thing about how you pronounce her name correctly.
Is there?
Yeah, yeah. Is it? How do you say it?
Tori Amos?
Amos. Okay, we'll go with it. Um, I've never been a
Uh-oh.
fan. I've heard her music in the past, obviously. Um, I think that some of her songs have definitely kind of sunk into my conscious, kind of subliminally. Like I never put one of her records on per se, but I've heard it. and always liked it. I've always respected it. Um, but I've never listened to any of these records in their entirety. So
Mm.
you chose, well, I kind of chose this record for you. You gave me a few options. Um, and out of those options that I was given, I was just like, that one, at a very quick glance, I actually did some really, really, really fast research on all of those records. And I was just like, okay, this one seems like the most interesting, like to me at
Mm,
least.
cool. Yeah.
So,
Do you
and
remember what the others were?
Kate Bush, I can't remember the name of that album. The Red Shoe something, was
The
it?
Red Shoes. Yeah.
The Red Shoes. Based on like, or she made that was like to create a play or something. I forget. I forget now. But it was or based on some opera or something. It seemed like there was a lot there, and I was just like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But either way, after that there was I can't remember what the other option was. I think you gave me three.
Yeah, I did.
This one and then what was the other one?
I don't remember. It was
Okay.
months ago.
It obviously wasn't as important. Um, but this one is cool. And so yeah, so I listened to this. I didn't go back and listen to everything else because there was actually way too much here. Like I don't know, like okay, wait. So how much of a Tori Amos fan are you?
Like if 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, like if 10 is like the girls like screaming and crying at the shows,
Hmm.
I'm like a 8 or 9.
So you're
Like
partially
I've seen
screaming, partially
her.
crying.
I'm not screaming at all because I want to hear every delicious second of what
Yeah,
she's doing. I'm not singing along because again,
because she's doing
the
it and
answer
she's
A.
perfect. Sure.
Yeah, but I might cry. I think I like quiet cried like both times I've seen her. Yeah.
Okay. All
Just
right.
because she's so incredible and moving and masterful and unique, singular, really.
Okay. Well, and aside from that, because those are true. I'm sure they're true. I've never seen her perform live, but um, the music is meaningful to you probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like as with all of her fans, like I think that the thing about her and her music is that um, she creates these like connections with her fans. I think the fans kind of like I don't know how to say it accurately or appropriately, but you latch on to this music because it's meaningful to you in some way. Maybe you analyze the music and kind of like direct it towards your own life. Maybe you sympathize with what she's going through and what she's singing about. The music itself obviously is very kind of engaging and entrancing in a sense. There's there's just so fucking much here. Like I got into this record and I got into some of the research. I was just like, holy shit, this is a like we could talk about this for hours, like
True.
legitimately. So I mean, so about how much of a fan are you? I mean, like this isn't the one record that you care for. Like you like all of her music or you like a number of her records?
Yeah. Uh yes, I like a number of her records. I love the live thing that she put out actually just after this, which is called To Venus and Back, and it's performances mostly from this tour. So she toured Choir Girl and her and her team recorded a lot of those performances. I think there's also a bonus DVD
Hmm.
in the pack. It's like a dual pack, but I've never had the bonus DVD. Maybe it's just the second CD. The pack that I have doesn't contain that. I think Jeremy
Okay.
got it for me. It's like, here, take this because I can't sell it because it doesn't have the bonus DVD.
Right. Okay.
Um, or whatever the second disc is. She's so accurate live. She's such a good singer.
Hmm.
Um, and also she does some like improvisational stuff that I find really interesting. Also, just the set list of To Venus and Back is like absurdly good and like just giving the people what they want. Um, so I listen to that one a lot. I also super love Scarlet's Walk, which was the next one after that. And I love Boys for Pele, which was I
The
guess
one
two
before
before
this.
this one.
No, it's the one right
Yeah,
before
you're
this.
right. Under the Pink is the second one, which I
Yeah.
also love. Although I mostly on Under the Pink love certain songs. Like that song God is amazing. When
Mm,
I first heard that song, even still, this is like 20 years on, I get chills when I hear that song. I would say Tori is the artist that gives me chills the most out of anyone else. And I've listened to her shit to the ground. There
hmm.
is like nary a new component to her music that I have not already noticed and like been moved by, but I still get chills just because I don't know. It's like, I guess music is just so personal, obviously, but there's something about like the tone and timbre of her voice, the way she uses it. To your point, it's not, I don't have any experience with miscarriages or like sexual abuse. And those are things that she does have experience with and sings about a lot. So it's not like her lyrics are really touching me in a personal way where she's telling my story and I
Hmm.
feel seen and heard. That is actually no part of my love for her. So I think those girls screaming maybe have that like link. And maybe
Sure.
that's what bumps you from an 8 or a 9 to a 10, I don't know. Um, but like someone like Amanda Palmer of Dresden Dolls,
Mm,
she also sings about really tender and intimate and vulnerable topics like this. Same exact thing for me. No connection there, but her voice gives me chills. Her songs make me cry.
mm.
I can't understand how she's so good, so unique, so singular. Both her solo work and Dresden Dolls. So I don't know. I can answer in the ways that I've just answered, but I think there's some mystical spice just seasoned onto some of this stuff where I'm just like, the sum of the parts don't equate to how it makes me feel. And I can't quite put my finger on it?
Mm, okay. Let's see. So this album came out in May 5th, 1998. Where are you when this album comes out?
Mm, no idea because I didn't get into it right then. Let's see, I'm in high school.
Okay.
Um, ostensibly, yeah, like May. Yeah, I guess I would have been like just ending eighth grade
Okay.
vibes, but again, like I didn't listen to it, so it's perfectly telling the story of when I did find it in my life. I don't
Hmm.
know if I would have even been able to get it, you know what I mean, when I was that young. But maybe I
Right.
would have because I was getting Silent all these years. I was getting Cornflake Girl,
Oh, wait.
I was
So in 98,
getting,
in 98, you were already turned on to Tori Amos and her previous records.
yeah, but I think maybe just the first one.
But so in 98, what are you turned on to? Like, what are you were engaging with at that time?
Probably a lot of grunge music.
Okay.
Um, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, um, and maybe even getting into like that sort of late 90s response to grunge music, which didn't hold up very well, but what are you gonna do? Like Third Eye Blind.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably into The Cure, probably into Depeche Mode, just because I had these things from, secondhand purchases. My
Okay.
grandmother, my Nana took me to thrift stores a lot. My mom did maybe here and there, but like I'd also ride my bike around my community and just like go to yard sales on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I bought my Nintendo. That's how I bought all my Nintendo games. That's how I
Okay.
bought my like black and white like box TV with the like turning channel
Dial.
selector.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
how I bought my first phone to go in my own room. Yeah.
Hmm.
Allowance, baby.
Yeah. Cool. Very independent. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now,
I'm an only child.
oh, okay. Well, so now you obviously were into music in 98. You already knew Tori Amos at the time, but you didn't get this record. So when did you get this record?
I got this record when a friend of mine was like, this is so crazy that this is how this went down. But um there are certain friends of mine that I've had for a long time where like every time I listen to Dave Matthews Band, I'll text Eleanor and be like, I'm listening to DMB right now. Because we're both from Charlottesville. he's from Charlottesville. Like, I'm not from there, but like we met there in 10th grade and have been like besties ever since. And she was like a big Dave head when I met her. And so she was getting me into all the stuff she was into, and I was getting her into my like more weird stuff. And we were like going to shows together, whatever.
Hmm.
We actually saw Neil Young open up for Dave Matthews Band
What?
live in Charlottesville.
Jesus Christ.
This really
Is
happened.
Dave Head the appropriate name as well for Dave Matthew Band fans? Is that
That's what I use. That's what I'm using. I'm
what is
sticking to
it?
it.
Cheese what is it for Jimmy Buffett fans? Is it Cheeseheads? No. What is it?
Oh, ew, I have no idea. No comment.
Dave Heads. Okay, I'm just gonna stick with
That's a
that.
gross. That's a gross. I'm not very into that cheesehead
Yeah. I don't know what the
club.
hell. I don't know what it is. I forget. But
Yeah,
Dave Head, I like it.
she was a Dave lover, huge Dave lover. She was on like the Nancy's.org
I don't know what that is. The
world.
Nancy's.org. What?
Shout out Nancy's of the world. Um, so every time I listen to Dave, I text Eleanor. And every time I listen to Tori, I would text my friend Erin. And someday, somehow, she was like, yeah, I like that one, but like I like blah 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 more. I think it was Scarlet's Walk. And then I was like, oh my God, I don't know that one. And then I was like, oh snap, there's all these Tory records I've never heard. How did I do that? Just
Hmm.
like a blind spot. Um, it was happening around the time I was getting more into Kate Bush. I was driving from Athens to Atlanta a lot. I was living and working for a family in Atlanta, but playing in a band and dating someone in Athens. And they're like an hour drive. So I had that hour drive to listen to an album or two,
Hmm.
and was just like playing the shit out of Choir Girl and Scarlet's Walk. And then a lot of Kate Bush, a lot of Sonic Youth, like rediscovering them and kind of taking them more seriously, listening to some of the other records other than Dirty.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of a freak thing where I just like forgot to dig deeper on Tori, even though
Okay.
I loved her.
Yeah. Well, so what year was that you're doing all this driving back and forth?
Mm, 2015, 2016.
Oh, okay. So not too long ago, really.
Yeah,
So
decade.
this album is fairly new to you. I mean, as far as like, especially considering how old it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess about a decade.
Okay. All right. So you're already a singer and songwriter, obviously, in 2015. So, I mean, as far as choosing a record that is important to you, like, and kind of like influences what you make, I mean, what do you think you drew from this record?
Mm, that you can do whatever you want. And if you have great, reliable collaborators who have their own brilliant ideas and can execute your ideas really well, you're unstoppable.
The sky's the
So yeah,
limit.
yeah, some of the things that I mentioned earlier that like specifically struck me on this record, and maybe like they'd struck me on earlier records, but I feel like she comes into her her thing more on this record. For me, it's like using the in-breath as a scrumptious sound, not just having it be utilitarian. We all have to take the in-breath.
Hmm.
Some people take the in-breath away from the microphone, or they kind of fade in the in-breath, or kind of just chop the in-breath off
Sure.
and have that be like, this never happened. But Tori's like, this is happening. This is how I make the amazing sound. Let's
Yeah.
honor that. Or at least that's my like viewpoint of what I think she would have said. Like that's kind of how I think about it now. And sometimes the in-breath can be like the beginning of the concept. So like whatever lines you're about to
Hmm.
sing, the in-breath, how the in-breath is drawn can kind of like set that up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
that was like,
Well, so now you bring up an
um,
interesting point that I want to ask you about. So, so I guess this album was her first band endeavor. Like she had
mhm.
three prior to this, which was all just basically her solo. Um, and I guess this was a little controversial amongst her fans at the time. Well, you got into it later anyway, but either way, this was kind of a controversial moment for her. Kind of like Bob Dylan plugging in at
Exactly. I was just thinking
Russell.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so where did you stand at the time? I mean, I guess you embraced the change.
Yeah, I didn't stand anywhere at the time because I didn't know. And like I said, I didn't I didn't hear this record till many years later. But obviously I stand in the camp of like experimentation and freedom. And I think it's really unfortunate when fans box an artist in, like, first of all, like it's none of your business. And like you don't rule the artist's mind. And maybe you had like a desire, but like that artist doesn't owe you fulfilling that desire, you know? So it's like if you choose to not like it or listen to it anymore, that's completely your prerogative. But
Hmm.
an artist should feel free inside their own career to do whatever they want to do, you know? And that goes both ways. Like, I think an artist should not feel compelled or driven to pursue a certain sound just because of like metrics and like optics and like how it's going to do, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, of course. So in this research, there's a ton of information on this record and every song individually. I mean, like if there was no lack of information, and Tori Amos seems to be incredibly verbose. Um, like I have like quotes from her for almost every single thing, every aspect of this record that I wanted to kind of like touch on.
Oh, I love that. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to read a lot of stuff to you that were quotes from her.
Okay.
And so let's see. So the first thing I have here about this record is that she says, it felt like all these songs were different beings. I just saw some of them in room 13, and I saw some of them answering the phone, and it became very much like a traveling group of, I don't know, wanton women, I guess. And I feel like these songs they're a bit of a group. You know, some are altos and some wear leather and some are sopranos and they only eat meat. And some, you know, some don't like men and some just adore men. And some aren't interested in anything but, you know, reading. And they become very much like entities. End quote. So, you know, with this quote in mind, I was curious of like how do you see music? Like, or how do you see the music you make?
That's so funny that she said that checks out in terms of like the album artwork. I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah.
like pursued the liner notes, but that kind of reminds me of American Doll Posse, which is her several albums later.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know that
I don't.
album art, but
I
it's
heard
like all
about it.
these different women, different wigs, different outfits, different vibes. It's kind of like
Oh,
giving.
she lit like fulfilled that personas like visually in the artwork and live, I
I think
guess.
so. I mean, I'm just making an assumption based on what she said that that's kind of how she saw that album. I don't know how she presented American Doll Posse live actually, but in the album artwork, yeah, it's her posing in all and some of the music videos posing in all of these different like
Well,
get-ups.
even for this album, because like even in this album, every song. So, okay, so the title of the album is from the Choir Girl Hotel. So essentially, every one of the songs that are on this album is a different person, a different persona that she kind of inhabits, and that's kind of who's singing the song, I guess, maybe.
Cool. Yeah.
So, you know, that's like what this quote is about, is that she sees all these women together, and that's all the 12 tracks, you know, all these 12 people representing each track on the album.
hmm I mean, I'll just speak first to the record and these songs. Like, I 100% hear that. I don't know if you do. Like,
Hmm.
every single song is like, are you kidding me? How can you go from Northern Lad to Hotel, then to Playboy Mommy, then to Pandora's Aquarium? It's just like, how do you?
Like these are big jumps.
Every song has such a different personality and a way of singing it and like a format. So that
Hmm.
makes complete sense. I love that. I feel like this is almost like a concept album, or maybe she came to that point where she saw it like that based on a reflection. Like it was already happening, the songs were kind of out there, and then she like was kind of like trying to think about them or consider their order, and she was like noticing these things. I don't know what came first for
Hmm.
her. Um, but I'm not to the point where I experience, at least with this full length, this is the first full length I've ever put out. I don't exactly think about it that way. And I don't even know that like, sure, we considered order quite a bit. But it was more about,
The flow of the
the
music.
flow of songs.
Yeah.
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 Like, And I'm sure she thought about it that way too. And honestly, the flow on this record is impeccable. It's one of my favorite things about it. But yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, when analyzing, a visual artist or a musician or whatever, if these art historians, if these commentators aren't like grasping at straws, and then that teaches us to kind of do the same and like create this whole world around
Hmm.
something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. In answer to your question, I don't really see songs as entities or women or people. At least not yet. This was her fourth studio album. She'd done world tours. She'd been on the Billboard Top 40,
Right.
like multiple times, like playing huge arenas. Like I haven't had those experiences, and I haven't been a career artist
Sure.
um like she has. So I don't know, like, kind of what happens to your mental at that point. Or maybe she's honestly always been such a,
Eccentric.
conceptual,
Yeah.
yeah,
A truly like
artist.
artistic mind where I mean it's just like it's in compulsive, I think, for her to kind of work in this way.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, let's see. The next thing is on From the Choir Girl Hotel, Amos is integrated within a full band sound, unlike like we were saying, Little Earthquakes and Boys from Pele, and also incorporating elements of electronica and dance music into her songs. She directed the band in terms of imagery for each of the album's tracks, and then would leave them alone to see what they came up with. Quote, it was about getting the musicians to really hear the soul of the song and then giving them freedom, she said in 1998. Quote, that entails a certain amount of letting go after you've had nearly full control over every sound on your albums in the past. So I've listened to all of your previous work as far as I can tell up to this moment, especially, the new full-length album coming up. Would you say that you went through something similar with your current band?
Mm, no. And I also don't think I have the exact former experience that she has.
You were
So,
never a solo artist. You never really kind of composed for yourself by yourself.
no, I was, and I did. That was how the first EP came about with Jeremy on drums. The second thing, I was collaborating with Colin and Rob, and I feel like Rob presented me several beats, and I improvised and scooted, made requests for him to scoot certain things around to fit the song the way that I needed it to go. But he gave me beats to begin with that I was inspired by.
Mm,
Colin and I kind of created beats bespoke more to my sort of guitar and vocal like driven existing songs. So that EP, that was a collaboration with both those guys, but two songs were one guy and two songs were another guy, just because Rob moved to like Scotland or something in the middle of our collaboration. So it just worked out that way.
mm,
And then the EP with Ian um was, he had some guitar licks and just general ideas, maybe progressions that he sent to me. And I did the same thing that I did with Rob, where I just was sort of improvising. Like, I'm always writing poems. I have like no lack of ideas, written ideas, and, couplets and just rhyming schemes, and just have basically like I was Tori's band, if you want to say it. Like, I got guitar progression and I could say, okay, what vibe and mood is this progression eliciting in me? And like, what like lyrical content would best match that? And then like go through the 300 something notes I have in my phone, which are all my poems. It's basically like a big notebook that I always have on me.
mm.
Um, and see kind of what, usually it's something recent because you're always getting better, but what piece best matches that, and then like go back and be like, okay, I need this part to be like 4 bars longer, like we need to do some kind of bridge here, I'm feeling like it needs to be in this tone. And then we just worked at it that way for several months, and then started playing live in the basement, rehearsing and playing with a drummer, and then recorded with this group on this album, Love Spells. like I said already, it's been a number of different ways that we've written these songs.
Hmm.
Um, but usually Kyle creates some kind of guitar movement, whether it's something that we've worked on together or something that he developed on his own. And then he and I work one on one, wherein I'm deciding like which lyrics go with this. Maybe he's playing it on loop and I'm improvising, the vocal melody, or maybe I record it to a voice memo and I kind of do that in my own time and then we bring it to the band.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's already working in a little bit of a different way for the second album because we're already starting to write new stuff and
Yeah.
it's kind of like beginning with beats.
And you already have
So
like a mostly set band. Like your band's pretty much intact at this point.
no. So sadly we lost Adam Cozy. He recorded the album with us and we knew he was already going to be stepping away after that was over.
He's the drummer,
He
right?
yeah, he has a
Okay.
young child who's having some like special needs at home.
Oh,
So he has stepped aside from our band. So in knowing that we started auditioning people and we've auditioned probably a dozen different cats. And it's just such a specific sound. A lot of people have been like, I don't know how to drum to this stuff. A lot of people have been like, I don't know how to play bass to this stuff. I mean, finding Keith was an endeavor as well.
hmm.
Um, but he's such a good fit for us and we're obsessed with him. So super grateful there. But we have been playing with a guy named Bobby. It's a pretty good fit. And we just played two album release shows this past week. The album came out on Friday. We played a gig here in Portland at the Lollipop Shop on Thursday night. That was Bobby's first show with us. And then
Oh
we
wow.
played the next night, the album release, the day of the release, in Seattle at a place called Bad Bar. That was
Hmm.
Bobby's second show.
Cool.
So it's been a bit of a transition when you really should just be like pounding it. But that's how it works out sometimes.
Yeah. No, I mean you got to do what you got to do. It's very unfortunate that Adam had issues with the family life because I mean I know what that can be like, but you have to prioritize things, and unfortunately, family and children usually tend to take the priority.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm sorry to hear. But sounds like you guys are getting back on it and getting right back to it. So that's all that really matters, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we want. So, Kyle and I have a very like focused life together. Even when we're not doing music right then, kind of always talking about it and thinking about it. And it very
Hmm.
much seeps into both of our just downtime in our own minds,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
never turn it off. And I think Keith's similar.
yeah. I mean, you can't help it. I mean, so you're in a relationship with Kyle is his name, right? The and that's an interesting kind of dynamic to be working with because if you're living together and you're in a band together and you're being creative together, I mean, like I know for me, like I have no musical connection to my wife. She she doesn't know a thing about music really. She doesn't care for music. Um, so I can't have that connection with her. I can't speak to her about, oh, I came up with this cool thing. You want to hear it? It's like, no, she has no fucking interest in hearing it. Like,
Wow.
well, I mean, if I really wanted to show her something, she would sit and listen. She'd be supportive, and she is supportive. But I'm just saying, as far as like, the creative process, from what you and I understand of it as musicians, it's an involved thing. I mean, and like for somebody else to share your idea with somebody, um, that they can then take and be like, okay, that's cool. Like, let's do this with it now, or how about I add this to it, like, or and like, it's different. It's weird because it can be challenging, to work with somebody, anybody, and to come up with something that you enjoy together. And
Very
then
much
also,
so.
and then like what you're saying, I mean, it's like all day long. Like you have ideas, so it's just like it's almost like you're never outside of the rehearsal space, kind of.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, someone asked me recently what our work-life balance was like, and I was like, oops, we forgot about that part.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, I
There
mean,
is no work. There is no life. It's just all work life. I don't know. Like it doesn't even feel like work. It's just like art, life is art, art is life. Like
yeah.
I don't know how to separate the two. I mean, sure, we watch films together and we like go out to dinner, but like inside of watching films together and going out to dinner, we're like talking about music,
Right.
just
Stuff that you
it never
like, that you're
ends.
listening to, stuff that you get turned on
Hmm.
to, like
Yeah. Our
not just
ideas
not
we're having based on the
right.
thing that's happening.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. A car
24.
drives by, the windows down, and this music blasting, and we're like, oh my God, that just gave me this beat idea. Because it wasn't what was happening, but from the distortion, it sounded like it was happening. Just
Mm-hmm.
anything at all times. You know what I mean? Like the sound of the kettle boiling. And then I like dropped something and it made this like really strange skittering beat. And then I'm like, oh,
Mm.
that with that. Oh, I want to sample the kettle. Oh man, how can I drop that again? Just whatever. Like really into found sound,
Yeah.
really
Oh,
into
that's
happy
cool.
accidents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That sounds great. Um, so as we get into this album, because we're going to start to, get into the track by track now, I think I should mention that with this album being a very personal and vulnerable album, I will do my best to not try to pry too hard into your own personal life.
Sounds great. Like I said, I don't have any of the sort of trigger warning stuff
Yeah.
around like sexual abuse or rape or miscarriages that Tori tends to sing about a lot
Right. Right. I mean,
in
because
my
this,
own personal history. But of course, people do that will be listening
of
because
course. Yeah.
the
Yeah. I
stats
mean,
are staggering on this.
oh yeah, I'm sure. But I mean, like, with that being said, it's just this is a very kind of intimate and personal album, and I don't think that it's just that's like an over exaggeration, because from what I've gathered in this research, reading and listening to interviews with Tori speak about it, specifically, yeah, there's no denying that this is a personal kind of almost autobiographical piece. Then and yeah, and it has mostly to do with miscarriaging, I guess you'd say it, because she had multiple miscarriages.
Yeah, three.
Yeah. And it's just like that lack of or that disappointment in not being able to be a parent, because when you think about how some people have kids and it's just like they didn't try necessarily. They just had it.
Mm,
And then when you get
right.
pregnant, you're like, "Oh, I'm having a baby." And you're all excited and psyched for it. And then for it to just
Maybe.
be taken away from you, spontaneously without any knowledge or whatever, you're not expecting it to happen. It just happens and it's tragic.
Yeah,
Um you don't have kids, right?
I do not.
Okay. Good for you. Well, I mean,
Thank
if
you.
you
I feel that way too.
Well, good, good. No, I mean, it's just like it's not for everybody, really, and especially as an artistic person and a creative type, it'd be much of a hindrance, obviously, that kind of happened with Adam,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Kyle and I have thought a lot about that. Like you were saying earlier, the priorities piece, like, it's just not the right move for us to bring something. We hesitate to even get a dog. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
we love dogs, we both do, but we just don't want anything standing in the way of doing music as much as we can.
right, absolutely. It's very smart. Yeah, you're right in
It's our
thinking that.
child, if you will, it's our baby, it's our culmination. And so it needs a lot of time and nurturing. And,
Hmm.
the amount of time and nurturing that two people have is not limitless. So
Right.
we've made it a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, so let's start with the first song, Spark. All right. So again, like I said, long quotes. Bear with me. So I have a quote here. It says, once you've felt life in your body, you can't go back to having been a woman that's never carried life. The other thing is feeling something dying inside you and you're still alive. Obviously, when it was happening, it was already over, but in my mind, you don't know that it's over yet. You're doing anything thinking, oh God, maybe if I put a cork up myself, maybe it'll keep this life in. That's why in Spark I say she's convinced she could hold back a glacier, but she couldn't keep a baby alive. She couldn't keep baby alive. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You just start going insane. There's nothing you can do, so you surrender and then start again. So, it's no uh, question that this this song Spark is about kind of the miscarriage that she had, or at least one of them that kind of led into this whole album, really. So we all go through things, but would you say that the things that led up to your new record were good or bad things?
Good things. Overall, I mean, the overall big picture is met Kyle in real life in a like organic way. Couldn't believe how well suited for each other we were. Um, my dad met him the next day because I was staying with my dad and Mary when I met him, and
Hmm.
like made a comment how similar we were. So all the hangs have just been like so effortless and like just in the flow for both of us, totally being ourselves, being like, whoa, I can really be myself. And just the unfurling over the last like 2.5 years together as we write these songs. Of course, we have issues like everybody, but it's just been very different from any other relationship I've ever had. So that has been incredibly rewarding and satisfying. Um, and, we didn't really know what was going to happen when he asked me to collaborate with him that night, New Year's Eve. We made one song and he came to visit me here in Portland 4 days later, stayed for a long weekend. And that's when we decided he was going to move here. And he moved here within a month. So it was like a crazy whirlwind
Hmm.
thing where we just like committed fully and have never doubted or like disagreed with that decision. Um, so that being like the sort of seed that everything else comes from, incredibly positive. We've had struggles along the way with finding the right group of people to bring, our sort of vision to its highest culmination, its highest sense of resonance. Um, I would say that's been like the biggest struggle that we've had. Um, but we did it with this record. To then have more shifts after it comes out is just sort of in line with what it always is. Unless you're some lucky bastard like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and they just had this like unbelievable group that they did like a whole bunch of records with until Bonham died, basically.
Hmm.
Um, doesn't always happen like that for everyone.
Right, right. Okay. So ultimately a positive experience and positive feeling going forward with the new album coming out.
Yeah,
Out now, I'm sorry. It is out now.
out now as of last Friday.
Love
We
Spells,
have,
and you're releasing this yourself, right?
we are, yeah, indeed. Yeah, I just want to say sonically about this song. For me, it's such a like strong start to an album. The sounds are so unique. I'm like not even sure what the instrument is that sort of starts the song
Hmm. Okay.
or like combination of instruments. And the timing is really funny. It's just such a like bold way to start an album.
Sure.
And I always continue to applaud Tori on being bold. If you can say one thing about Tori, it's that she's bold.
Absolutely. I completely
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah. Even just in her speech, I mean, just like talking to people, she just like pulls the most random shit out of wherever. And it's like the last thing you expect to hear out of this, kind of seemingly, kind of proper lady, I mean, like, is that an inaccurate thing? I mean, like, what do you think as far as this, like her, like we were talking about Marissa Nadler earlier. It's just like, what is her brand, like Tori Amos?
Mm. Yeah, I guess like, I think she's in like her 60s now, so I hate to assume I know who she is now. And we met once and she was very gracious and lovely.
Hmm.
Um, but I think her brand when she was first starting out, maybe for the first three records before she started, I think trying to have kids, because I think that really changes you just innately,
Hmm.
was like kind of like hairy armpits. You say all the fucking swear words that you want. She is a maniac live. She is like this. here's one piano and here's like a harpsichord or like something else. And she's straddling the piano bench.
Hmm.
So like her open crotch is facing the crowd and
Yeah.
she's going back and forth. She has different microphones. It's like she's like making love to these instruments and you. It's so crazy. I've never seen anything like it. And with Lilith Fair and like the whole world of her like being on the cover of Rolling Stone with like Bjork and PJ Harvey,
Mm.
she was just like thrust into this role of like, I think kind of like the brassy, brazen, like abnormal one,
Mm.
she's definitely not as accessible or as like cute as Björk, and she's not as sort of like gutsy and thrashy and like gnarly as PJ, but
Mm.
she's this like kind of like confusing, ethereal soothsayer, and you never know what she's gonna say.
Mm. Yeah. Soothsayer. I like that. I like that adjective for her.
It's like a wacky witch.
Yeah. Wacky witch. Okay. Yeah.
At
And
least that's how I
Stevie
saw
Nicks is
her.
the white witch. Tori Amos is the wacky witch.
Sure, yes.
All right. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. So let's move on to Cruel.
Mm, love
Let's
this one.
see. So yeah, musically speaking, I'm not even touching on any of the music, and I understand that because, and I think that I'm doing that because this album is so dense. I mean, like just thinking about the lyrical content and the messaging from this album, there was so much to like divulge and to like dissect. Musically, it's a whole other fucking world, I mean, like I can't understand the music any better than I can understand the lyrics, so it's just like I kind of had to focus on one thing.
I see. I actually focus on the other thing. And so I think it's
The
an interesting
music.
conversation between you and I because in any of Tori's albums, I'm like, what does she mean by that? Like,
Hmm.
she makes up words, not like as much as Elizabeth Fraser and Cocteau Twins, where she's literally like speaking her own language. But like she kind of she does Toryisms, and you're just like,
Mm.
what is that word? And she also pronounces things in a like a, oh, I'm sorry, was there an agreement around how we pronounce this? Because I'm just doing it my own way.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, what is that? And then you'll look in the liner notes and be like, huh? That's what she's saying? Okay. So for me, for years, I mean, yes, I always like dive into liner notes and I love liner notes as like an art form, always have.
Mm.
But I for me, it's so much about the songs themselves sonically, this
Hmm.
record, why I chose it. It's like
Yeah.
very little to do with the themes. I could like not know what she's saying at all and still be like, this is my shit.
Sure. Still be moved by it too. Yeah. No, I get
Yeah.
that. I get that completely. I just don't know how to, especially like as far as speaking about this album. I mean, like, who knows, who knows how much about music that they will be able to actually comprehend this. And I honestly, I can't speak about the musical composition either. Like as far as like what's happening on this album. I mean, it's just so kind of complicated and complex.
Yeah, which is maybe why I love it.
Yeah. No, I mean I don't know. It's intriguing for sure. I just think that
Lots of
they're
sounds where you're like, that's
right.
a sound I've never heard before.
Right. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
so much. There's so many layers. There's so much like there's so much stuff going on. It's just it's weird. It's very hard to kind of like get into. But so Cruel, let me just say, I have this quote from her. When you're starting to talk to people who have that kind of loss, being miscarriage, somebody piping up going, well, the angels were there for us during this time. Well, that's beautiful. But people have to understand that they're not there for everybody all the time. They get lost on the way. That's why in Cruel, when I say I don't know why, I really don't know why I can be cruel. I don't know why the angels aren't there for everybody, but they're not. Um, And so for me, like thinking about this song and like thinking about the like, where she is in her life, I mean, I can see why. I can see why, especially at this time in her life, she can be cruel. I actually read a number of quotes from Tori that were given at this time, having that same kind of like biting, sarcastic tone. Um, so I don't know. I was going to ask, when do you find yourself at your most cruel?
So I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart,
Hmm.
like a lot, like an inordinate amount. I'm an Aquarius sun, but I have like 5 or 6 planets in Capricorn, which means I'm very systems oriented. I'm very organized
Oh.
and just a time when I can think, I'm never cruel per se, but like when my diva comes out, maybe is like in the studio when the shit isn't handled for me. And I'm kind of like in a situation where I'm creating or requesting the systems be put in place so that my Capricorn can all be at ease.
Hmm.
And then I can feel free and creative inside of those like frameworks and parameters.
Hmm.
Um, so like maybe some cruelness came out in the stew with like Adam Lee, shout out our engineer. And he also mixed Disembark and The Witness. He's very ADHD, self-professed, and brilliant mind, incredible in the studio. Really efficient guy in the studio behind the desk. Like loved working with him, would recommend him to anyone. He's at Jackpot in Portland, Oregon. Um, but he'll go anywhere all over the world actually. But he and I got along great and he's a good friend. But like I definitely had some moments of like sharpness with him and or my band. If like, I'm also the only girl in the room, and it's like
Hmm.
every girl musician out there knows what I'm talking about. Where like we'd already had conversations wherein I said like how I wanted it, or what my vision was or what I was thinking. And like it wasn't, if it was ever not like that, kind of being like, okay, did you not hear me? Did you misunderstand me? Did you choose a different way for a reason that I'm going to be delighted by? Did you choose a different way for a reason that I'm going to be like pissed off by?
Hmm.
Um, it's just part of it. But I would say like maybe a little bit of sharpness comes out in the studio. Just, I mean, God, with everybody there, like we're all not sure how it's going to go. We've all never done this with this group of people before. And
Hmm.
we're like 4 individuals plus Adam, our engineer who also has like a creative stake in this project, just seeing how it goes, how the collaboration in the stew goes, because that's very different from the collaboration in the basement. I mean, it was awesome. Everyone flowed so well together, and our work as a unit, as a unified front, was like so strong, so heavy.
Hmm.
But yeah, little moments came up, and I would say like just in like memorable past, that's kind of probably the place where I was the most cruel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, do you use any of that energy in the music?
You know what? I try, and whenever I'm actually angry and feeling it rising, I'm not on pitch.
Hmm.
And I have to take a pause, let it settle, ground down. Then I will not be all over the place. Like we have a song called Entanglements, and it's really about like the wealth disparity that I witness here in Portland and,
Hmm.
worldwide, really.
Sure.
Um, and I thought the delivery for that needed to be very like kind of acerbic and aggressive and intense. And every time I did it that way, which was the way that it was sort of naturally coming, it just wasn't working.
Hmm.
Tried it a bunch of times and take a little pause, come back to it. When I wasn't thinking as much about how mad it made me, how mad it makes me, I was able to more objectively deliver the lyrics in a way that they just sounded the best. I think that mentality is still infused into the lyrics. Obviously, I wrote them obviously I feel them and I'm saying them. And I think that my like dismay still comes through. But I find that if I'm really feeling emotions like in a like heated kind of vehement way, it's like my heart rate and my breathing and my this sort of lump in the throat feeling like
Hmm.
doesn't create the most beautiful or accurate singing.
Sure. I was gonna
Yeah.
just say that I was gonna be like, do you lose control of like your instrument? Like you don't have as
Yeah.
much control if it's like if it's bubbling up and you.
Yeah. It's like if your hands are sweaty and shaking and you're sort of trying to like move quickly on the, either with your pick or left hand stuff, like fretboard stuff, like
Hmm.
I can relate to that too. You're like having like, it's almost like jitters. It's like, it's something that it's like this energy as opposed to like stable, calm, focused energy.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Let's see. So we're gonna move on. Okay,
Black
so
Dove.
yeah, Black Dove is the next song. I have this quote here about this song. It's a little wordy. Let's see. So it says, when I sleep, I often have nightmares. I can already hear your readers saying, I knew that. The way your songs sound, you must really have horrible nightmares. Just like the one I'm describing in the song Black Dove off the last album from the Choir Girl Hotel. I see a black dove. I see its face clearly. The dove is transparent, like it is made of glass. I can see my hand through it. An auger goes through it, and it is bleeding water. It's kind of weird, horrifying visual. So now what do I have to say about this song? Like I don't the question I have for you doesn't really pertain to this song specifically. But just I've definitely come across articles and interviews with Tori which picked her as receiving songs more than writing songs.
Cool. Hmm.
And so I was just curious, like do songs come to you and you feel them, like you feel you receive them, or do you feel you have to be consciously working on them?
Yes.
Both?
Yes and yes. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, wait, how did we write that? Where, when, where, how, why? Like, yeah, it's almost like you get embodied, taken over by dot 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 spirit,
Hmm.
aliens, God. No, no, no idea. I do feel like the writing lyrics process for me is very embodied, very considered, very present.
Hmm.
I'm never like in a meditative state, like, whoa, where'd those come from? That doesn't happen to me. It's like
Yeah.
the Capricorn being like, okay, oh no, we want this to rhyme in a little bit more of a weird way. Let's do like an off rhyme there. Oh no, we want this to be like a three-way rhyme, whatever it is, whatever the like concept is, kind of, or the parameter. But
Hmm.
vocal melody, no idea where that comes from. Never, ever, ever have I been like, oh, let me do a little Joni Mitchell thing here. Oh, let me do a little Aaliyah thing here. I,
Hmm.
I also have never been like, oh, that first thing I did is a no. I don't know how or why I got this level of trust. And maybe it's just because it's just straight up spirit and I just know to trust because it's just in our bodies somehow. But like, I've never, like, how I told you I will like do a voice memo of a Kyle guitar line and like go to my bedroom, like get cozy, candles lit, salt lamps on, and just be like basically free improvising, recording that. So I'll
Hmm.
like play the voice memo from my laptop, hit record on my voice memo on my phone, and then pull up my note, have my lyrics there. So it's like a
Hmm.
closed loop
Yeah.
and just improvise. I've never been like, I don't like that. I'm gonna start over. I don't know how or why, but it just always feels like what comes out is my voice. So that's what I should use. Like it probably will be part of my process one day to be like, oh no, let's like do an exercise where we use the fourth idea that we have for each song. But right now it's just really trusting that what comes out the first time is like what needs to be seen right now. And a lot of
Hmm.
times, like with Disembark, like just truly my improvisational delivery is like literally exactly basically what the song is. We just added a second A on the end, but it's the same A as the first A. Disembark is A B A. So like I did the A and the B, and then we just added the A again, and that was the song. And I think that song is so strong and so hooky in a way that like most songs aren't hooky. Like most songs are hooky in a hooky way. This is hooky in like a weird, wacky, like underhanded way,
Hmm.
which is cool. That's interesting to me. I feel like hooky in a normal sort of mainstream radio way has been done for like 60 years, you know?
Sure. Right.
Um, yeah, so I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, it's very interesting just to kind of hear where people kind of how they come about like not just your process, but just like creatively speaking, like where do ideas even come from, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, and then like the finished composition, like when you're done tracking everything and you play it back, you're like, wow, where the fuck did that come from? Like you don't even
Sometimes,
remember kind of like what all the process was to get there.
sometimes we do, and we're like, oh, that was interesting because it was different from this other time we remember. But then, like maybe a third or a half of the time, we're kind of like, where did that one come from? You know?
Hmm. Yeah. I was gonna say let's move on to the next song, which is Raspberry Swirl, but I don't think I want to talk about that one.
Oh, now,
Well, I mean,
really?
I definitely want to skip some songs. I don't actually have a question for this song.
Okay.
So, like I said, I mean, I got pretty much in-depth quotes for every single song. And the thing about Raspberry Swirl is that it's essentially a song about cunnilingus.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was wondering if you were going to say that the raspberry swirl, because, okay, so I haven't read any of these quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are a
Okay.
you thing. This is not a me thing.
Sure.
Um, and I always thought that this meant like, yeah, whether it be like intercourse or like giving head, like when I'm on my period or when,
Mm.
like the raspberry swirl is like on my period. But then when I realized that this whole record is about
Miscarriage. Miscarriage.
miscarriages, thank you. Then I was like, oh shit, is she talking about like she's still sort of miscarrying and
Mm.
sex or giving head during that moment? Like that would just be next level.
Mm.
But yeah, let's skip this one. I also, to be honest with you, want to skip Jackie's Strength. It's my least favorite on the album.
Oh,
I
okay.
most of the time, to be real, skip it. Unless it's important to you, in which case I'll just straight up say that, and that's
No.
fine.
But yeah, see, so those songs, yeah, nothing really too important there, I don't feel. I mean, like in the whole aspect of like, Tori's life, where she is in this moment in her life, writing this record. There's a lot of kind of interesting things there, but I mean, like just stuff you can really kind of like brush over, broad stroke stuff. So then we move down to IIE. So what I
I
have
love that one
here,
so much.
you like this one a lot? Okay.
Hmm.
I think from the way you've been describing things to me, I can I think I can probably understand that. So what I have written here is, some of you know that we like really good wine. So I wasn't quite sure if the things I was seeing was from that or if they were really happening. So what sounds like to me is like a hallucination almost. And it was a strange time. I had a bad pregnancy and lost the baby. And I started having this vision of this little Pueblo boy everywhere I went. And we knew it wasn't a little boy, so I really didn't know who he was. And the wine really wasn't that good. You know what I mean? So I would close my eyes when he would appear and I would follow him and he would say things like, "Come, rabbit, come on." And I would go. And we had this 1959 convertible and he was a little Zuni boy, a Zuni or Pueblo boy, and he would sit in the back with his arms like that spread out, and we would drive for hours and hours and hours, and I would sit there and we didn't know where we were going, but when we would get there, nobody would be alive. I don't know what this means. So it was a strange thing. It was like being in, I don't know, a bad Dustin Hoffman virus killer movie, and I don't know what we were supposed to do. So we would leave the town and he would tell me to build a campfire and and I'm an arsonist, so I really liked that bit. So I would build this thing and he would start dancing. And he would say, we failed today, but we have to go to the next town tomorrow. And this would happen over and over again. And we were always too late. And he would sing this thing in my head. and he would pat me on the head and he'd say, "It's okay. I.
Wow.
That
My
is a long
God.
quote from her Storyteller's performance.
I
Um,
love that. Oh my God. Storyteller. Oh, I need to watch that tonight. That's on.
oh yeah,
I
and she
haven't
tell
seen that.
right, and she talks like she explains every song kind of like this in her voice, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that was VH1, right?
Yeah, yeah.
VH1.
So
Totally.
so IIE, so maybe you could consider this boy Tori was seeing as an sensational being, like the track off your new record.
Maybe. Yeah, he's insatiable for preventing widespread death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, like the description that I try to read here, I was just like, I don't even know like what was she is this true? Is she actually like literally like driving around following this vision she's having? Like,
I mean, yeah, I could see them doing that.
mm,
I
yeah.
mean, any partner of Tori Amos, well, first of all, they have to know what they've signed up for, you know.
Hmm.
She's a wacky witch. She's gonna be suggesting things like that.
Yeah.
And you
Like,
either go along for the ride because you understand her and you get her and you have chosen her, or you're sort of like, this is not the girl for me, you know.
hmm.
That's my read. Um, that's so cool. Yeah, it definitely is almost like a war cry the way she does it. You know, she does it over and over and over. It's interesting. I never knew what that song was about.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that quote. How interesting.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna
She's
ask you, I mean,
she's
do you
definitely
have
the person that I would want to have like a sit down lunch with,
oh yeah.
like
Oh, I'm
of
sure.
anybody, just because she's such a unique mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have like visions like this that you use for inspiration?
No, not exactly.
What would you call it?
Um, hard to define, more like a brother, sister, cousin, book next to book on the shelf of something that already exists that has told me that it wants like a partner, like a brother, sister, cousin.
Hmm. Okay.
Way less. It seems to me that she was dealing, you know, with grief and loss. And I think Tori is also an incredibly tapped in person. And, you know, keep in mind, she's like experiencing these experiences pre social media, pre smartphone, pre pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, it was such a different world back then. It was so much purer. We were so much closer to source. We had so much more of our own time and our own psyches in our own hands. I long for that time
Hmm.
with every fiber of my being. 5G, just even if you think about like what's physically taking up space all around us and zooming by and infiltrating our, you know, physical bodies, like it's just such a different time. So
Hmm.
I like to remind myself of that whenever I feel depressed about certain ways that humans are these days. Like, you know, well, what are we supposed to do? Like, how are we supposed to overcome this? Where the barrage is so real, you know, from all angles,
Hmm.
water, air, soil, but all of these like very inspirational, odd, unique experiences she's had were post extreme loss and pre all of these like, you know, industrial changes that we've had on Earth. So I just feel like she was like a little bit closer to the heavens, or maybe just as a person she is. I think that's true, but also like people, all people then were just a little bit less scattered and torn in a million directions, you know.
Oh yeah. Right. Okay. Well, we're gonna need to move on. Liquid Diamonds is the next song, and that's another really tough one. How do you feel about this song?
I fucking love this song. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Okay. Why is that? Like, or like, do you fucking
Yeah.
love it?
Yeah. So I love the way she delivers the lyric Liquid Diamonds. It's like you can barely understand what she's saying. And
Hmm.
it's like she has so many notes inside of each word. like each word only really has two syllables, but she makes each word have like four or five or six syllables, and she's
Hmm.
in her like chest and head voice. And I mean, oh my God, Tori, when Tori's in her head voice, just like the world stops, like eargasm, you know? And her piano part is so gorgeous. This song gives me chills.
Hmm. Okay. It's a complex song. So that's why I don't really have anything to say about it. Like, I mean, as far as like, lyrically, what it means with the contents of it, no real idea. And I've really dove into this and I still can't figure it out. It's super complicated. And then musically speaking, again, also a very kind of difficult one to tackle. It's good. I like it, but I can't say why. It's one of those things. It's like it's really hard to kind of understand and kind of explain.
Yeah. I will say, like, to anyone looking for like a master class on like how to be a good singer, listen to this song. She, similar to somebody like Doja Cat, who embodies like the rapper, the like baby voice haver, and then the like hard voice haver, and then the like really beautiful, like gentle, tender singer, and then the like more like full chest voice singer.
Hmm.
Tori's doing all of that inside this one song. She really does have like a proper, like almost like rap bit in the end, which she then like ties into this like perfect like slide of like she's ending the rap and going into like a chest voice thing and then up into this head voice thing, this falsetto, beautiful thing, which just like trails off into infinite reverb. And it's just, it's
Yeah.
just so beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool to know. Um, the next song is She's Your Cocaine. Kind of really on the nose song, I feel. I
Yeah.
don't I don't feel like there's much to this, and I don't even know how well it connects to like the rest of this album.
Mm. Yeah. I don't either. Same with Jackie's Strength. I'm kind of like,
The only thing about
mm,
Jackie's Strength that I can say as far as like how it connects to this album is that in Tori's personal life, she was actually kind of reaching the point of like getting married. I believe that
hmm
I believe she was already engaged at this point to who is now her husband.
hmm
And so that's the only connection I can make there because Jackie's Strength is it seems very much it's like about marriage and it's about like as
Yeah.
someone that's conflicted with marriage and like I don't know this connection with Jackie Onassis and obviously the strength that she showed through her husband's assassination and so forth and having to you know uh perpetuate that strength to the country to the nation
Yeah.
that is watching this whole thing go down
Yeah.
so that's the thing I mean and so she's your cocaine this kind of I guess almost kind of is like that too because if we're thinking about Tori's personal life at this time that she's writing this record, I mean she is in grief due to her miscarriages, but she's also going to be a wife. She's going to get married, and so I think on the next song, Northern Lad, and the one after that, Hotel. These are the ones that kind of like delve into her personal life at the moment, where I think that maybe she's a little conflicted with where she is, or at least not conflicted, but needs to kind of come to grips or to just make some kind of, you know, personal concessions to like, is this the thing that I really want to do? Is this what has to happen now? You know, because like
Yeah.
marriage is a huge commitment. Um, you're not married, correct?
No.
And you've never been.
No.
Okay. So kind of like you were saying about, having children and or having a dog, I mean, these are major commitments that are going to kind of like, change the course of your life, really.
Yes, I've been proposed to twice and it never felt right. So I said, like, absolutely not.
Yeah, right.
I would never take something on like that, if it didn't feel right. So
Hmm.
it feels right with Kyle, and he and I talk about it sometimes, and so we'll see how it pans out
Yeah.
and when it pans out. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking now about She's Your Cocaine, and I've had this thought before, but it kind of like went on a detour. I wonder if it's like she's singing to like her future husband's brother, and like observes the social dynamics inside the family, you know. She's kind of like, you know how we all have feelings about our like significant others, brothers and sisters or parents.
Hmm.
Like kind of she's, I don't know if her husband has a brother, or maybe it's like her friend's brother or something related to her, but not like she's not talking to her lover, I don't think.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
I don't think you're far off because I mean the quote that I have here from that she had said is say we're eating dinner, right? And one of these girls is at the table and there's a big party for us. Some of these guys are going, "Isn't she the sweetest thing you've ever seen?" And you're going, "She just murdered the girl next to you. The girl you brought is like a walking corpse because of this other girl." Like over the head. They don't even get they don't even get these slime walking. These women try to get in and act like they're your friend. They act like they're your best friend, and so they find out all of your secrets. They find out everything, and then they go to your man or to your other friends and just completely ruin your relationships with them. I'm telling you, they are Lucifer. Lucifer with boobs.
Tori, I love her so much.
She's wild. She really is
She is a wacky
wacky
witch.
witch. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you were getting pretty
That
close.
part. Yeah.
All right. Well, so then Northern Lad. Um,
So now, yeah, now we're on. I mean, I personally feel like the first like three, four songs of this record are like immaculate.
mhm.
And then I love IE and I love Liquid Diamonds, right? Jackie's Strength, meh. She's Your Cocaine, meh. And then these final four songs are just like absolute perfection, especially like the way
Mm,
that they flow into each other.
okay. All right. Well, so Northern Lad says, my heart goes out to where that song comes from. It's very much about thinking you were loved for who you were and realized you weren't, and realizing maybe you don't love yourself. The line, I guess you go too far when pianos try to be guitars, is just about never being enough. I felt that with my instrument sometimes wanting to be Jimmy Page. You can only be you. A lot of times it's never enough for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like she got a lot of scorn from critics, um, who said that she was like trying to capture just the sort of like shock value,
Mm-hmm.
like shock, like grabbing lyrics when I think she was just being like fully herself. And same with Amanda Palmer. Again, like neither of them have ever sugarcoated anything. And you know, Tori's a little bit more like poetic. Amanda Palmer's just straight up like in your face delivering. But I just think that they both have like a very acerbic lyrical way, and that like maybe especially like male critics, but maybe even female critics just like couldn't roll with it, couldn't accept it,
Yeah.
even though the music is what it is and the vocal prowess is what it is. It's like the lyrics I think always gave critics like something to latch onto and sort of like complain about.
I
But
mean,
that song is just, it's just so beautiful. It's like had a
it's the love
northern
song.
lad not exactly had, that's the first lyric.
Yeah.
Had a northern lad, well, not exactly had, but, and then it's just like I just don't, she just writes unlike anybody else. It's so her personality, and it's so clear that like it's a Tori song. Like if I could just read the lyrics, I'd be like, that's Tori Amos, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She has such a voice.
Right.
And then it's just really like one of the few just straight up piano songs on the record, you know. It's not like there's no like trip hop going on. It's just very like right up against the chest. There's no layers, or you've been saying this whole record is very filled with layers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
instrumentation and vocal layering and doubling. And this one's just so visible and vulnerable.
Yeah. Okay. Now, based on the quote that I had read for you, specifically, you know, you kind of like think about that quote says, the line in the song, I guess you go too far when pianos try to be guitars, and then it says how's you know, you never feel like you're enough. I mean, I suppose all musicians always are looking to grow musically, you know, and so to think that, you know, you might be comfortable with where you're at right now could be a ludicrous assumption to make. But so, two questions. Are you happy with what you've made up to now? And where do you see yourself in your next era?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm so proud of Love Spells. I can't believe how gorgeous it sounds. We've been told that it's a work of art by a number of different people from different places and realms in our life.
Hmm.
Um, and just happy with my performances, happy with my ideas, happy with the band's performances and ideas. I
Mm,
feel like we
it's
captured
awesome.
everything in a really clean, clear, true way. I feel like we worked with a team that really reflects our ethics and our morals and our ethos as a band and our brand as a band. I wouldn't really change much. Um, and same with like everything I've ever put out to get here, you know, like I've played with trip hop and played with like folk and Americana, and I've played with just like voice as an instrument with effects. I feel like I've kind of indulged my every whim. So no complaints. The one thing that I'm really building on and working on currently is growing inside of my range and
Hmm.
growing inside of my accuracy.
Mm,
So I'm like fully comfortable with my skills as a lyricist, as a melody maker, and always wanting to improve as a guitarist. That I feel goes without saying because that's just like every guitarist always wants to do that forever and ever. My dad at 74 still wants to do that, but 73. But yeah, really interested in increasing my range. And keep on kind of honing the flip between chest and head so that
mm.
every single time it's what I want it to do. And really, I've been coached that like not thinking about the flip is the way you get the flip to be right. And I've employed that in the last two gigs, and it's 100% true. It's just like so crazy. You just have to like allow it to happen, really.
Hmm. Okay.
And yeah, and then accuracy. Accuracy as a singer is always just like you have to be able to hear yourself, and that just comes down to like how good the sound is at the venue and figuring out your placement in the studio. So are you both cans on and you're only hearing yourself in the loop of yourself in, you know, the headphones, which is basically like your wedge, or are you one on, one off, and you're hearing yourself in the room, and
Mm,
it's more about that? Or are they both off and behind your head, kind of resting on your ear bones back here? I
mm.
played with all of those, and it's just really individual and personal for each singer, like what gets them the best accuracy. Also, like resting your voice before you sing is so important. It's so
Yeah.
important, but also warming up is so important, and what's the best warm up for you. Like these are all things that I feel like every singer kind of has to hone for themselves, and I'm definitely in that place still.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, that sounds great. I mean, it's a great aspiration, and it's like, I mean, I'm not surprised that you're saying these things, and it's not because that you're not good at what you're doing. It's just that as a musician, you always want to be better,
Yes.
and it's just interesting where you focus your energy at the moment. I mean, like,
Hmm.
if I talk to you next year, it could be totally different.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
so the next song is Hotel, and I don't really have anything to say about that either. I mean, like, I say I don't have anything to say, and I mean I do, but I don't want to get into it just because we're kind of running short on time, and
Okay.
there's just so much here to get involved with. I kind of want to just touch on the last two songs. Playboy Mommy. I just want to do something to lighten the mood a little bit because
Okay.
all of the content so far has been so dark. There's this very, very long quote I have here. So I'm just going to summarize it for you, where it says how Tori was in France with her friend Beanie. Are you familiar with her friend Beanie?
No.
Okay, not
Shout
by
out
name.
Beanie.
Yeah, I mean, she gets mentioned a lot, and actually, Raspberry Swirl is about her friend Beanie.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah. After you watch Storytellers, maybe a lot more of this will start to make sense, and you'll start to kind of fill in these
Yes.
blanks.
Yes.
Um,
I can't wait.
so Beanie and her mother are there, and they're having like this lunch, this fancy place in France. They're drinking champagne. Beanie gets into the argument with her mother. So let's see. So Tori walks away. Essentially, she makes a point to let you know that she's wearing these platform shoes, and she's kind of like dressed very nicely, and she's in the schmoozy place. Beanie comes to find her. She says, "Let's go out to the deck and talk about this." And she's on this one of these weird roundy staircases like they have in the Love Boat, and she's at the top of the stairs, and she falls all the way down the stairs and lands on her face. Okay.
That's how the
Um,
song begins. Yeah.
yeah. So she says here, I trip all the way down and lie flat on my face, and I swear to Christ, I'm lying flat on my nose, and it's like I'm taped to the rug. And I say, "Oh, Beanie, I need more champagne. This is so horrible." But as I laid there, I said, "Oh my God, Beanie. Oh my God, I have the first line," which is the first line of the song.
Yeah.
So to
In my
switch things,
platforms, I hit the floor, fell face down, didn't help my brain out, I think
yeah,
is the line.
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So to switch things up, can you tell me about the silliest way a line or a song topic has come to you?
Oh my God. I'm not the best with silly, honestly. And I don't think this is silly for her. Like, it's like serious for her. I don't think she writes still. Okay, Tori has a way of writing things that if we said them or if we talked about them, they would seem silly.
Hmm.
But she's so serious. I don't think that I really write about silly things.
Right, but I mean, this
Hmm.
isn't a silly thing either. Like the way that she came with that
Yeah,
first line is not a silly scenario, but I think that in
right.
in relation to, like living the experience and saying like, "Holy shit, this is what I want to write about." Like that is a little
Mm-hmm.
silly. Like the content of the song, like none of that stuff, none of it is silly per se. I'm just saying that the context in which the line came to her and presented itself to her as being like, this is what I want to use as the opening line to my song.
Hmm. Yeah, it's less about opening line for me, but like Dirty Shirt, for example, I came up with this idea when Kyle and I in that first month, like I said, we met and then collaborated for the first time on New Year's Eve. And then like by my birthday, which is January 31st, he was living here.
Hmm.
Um, had moved to Portland to be with me and explore our relationship and this band. And in that month, I wrote, we were doing long distance. I wrote Dirty Shirt, the lyrics, because his shirt that he'd given me to literally smell him on while we were away was like sitting on my hamper. And like every time I would go take my clothes off and put them in the hamper, I would like smell his shirt and
Hmm.
just be like, okay, just, a couple more days or whatever. Like
Hmm.
that's kind of like a silly thing to do and like kind of ridiculous, like maybe people think gross thing, but like it
Yeah.
inspired the song Dirty Shirt, and I love that song, and I love that that song is about what it's about, and I think it's relatable to certain people. Like I have a very developed olfactory sense. My palate's really refined. I'm a chef. I've been a chef for 13 years. And before that, I've always been the person who's like obsessed with smells. Like I walk in a room and I'm like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
someone just opened up an orange. And like 400 feet away, there's like some like person eating an orange. It's just
Hmm. Yeah.
so weird. It's
Oh
just
no, but that
part of
that
who I
is that
am.
is very serious. I mean, like it hasn't happened to me in a long time because I've been married for, oh shit, we just had our anniversary. Oh, it's been 15 years. So
Wow. Oh my goodness. Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. So, like that kind of like frantic energy that you get from being with somebody.
Anticipation.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, and like so smelling them and like, having their smell on their clothes and kind of referring to that as this kind of like a welcoming thing is totally common, I'm pretty sure, I think. At least it was for
Hmm.
me. I mean, like yeah, there's definitely things if my wife were to leave me right this at this moment and I had, or let's just say she died, because that's probably a more likely scenario. Uh, uh, um, is that and her clothes was remained in my home, and
Hmm.
I would have to go through it, obviously, and stuff like that. And yeah, I would be able to smell her clothes and have it
Yeah.
remind me of her. I
Oh yeah.
mean, it's yeah. I mean, smell is so powerful. Just you smell certain things, and you kind of get put right back into some time in your life where you're like, holy shit, I remember smelling this, and this is what I was doing, and this was what it was, or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. The lyric is your dirty white shirt rests on my hamper in a ball. Whenever my heart starts to hurt, I smell the armpit and recall. That's the second verse of Dirty Shirt, which to me is like the most on the nose lyrics I've ever written.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just true. And what else could I do? I mean, I just had to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you
Sure.
just have to say it, amidst abstracted, bizarre wordplay ways of saying things. You can also just sometimes say the thing as like plainly as possible.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Okay.
that's, I guess, like the silliest.
Sure. Yeah, we'll just use silly, but I understand. It's not silly necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
for
let's
understanding.
of course. Of course. It's my job to understand. Okay. Um, let's move on to the last song, Pandora's Aquarium. So let's see. I don't have to read this quote I have here. I think that it's just important to kind of think about this song in a couple of ways. First of all, it was the first song that she started to write after her first miscarriage. And so it was kind of the gateway to this whole album. Secondly, let me look at the lyrics actually. Line me up in a single file with all your
All your
grievances. Stare,
grievances.
but I can taste you're still alive below the waist. Ripples come and ripples go and ripple back to
Back
me.
to me.
Now, the water is a huge factor in inspiration for her for this record. She was living by the water, and I guess she had
Mhm.
spent a lot of time sitting by the water and just kind of observing the tides kind of coming and going, and probably making that connection to life, you know, the cycle of life, if that's what you want to call it. So I was wondering, do you think there is any
I love that.
coincidence that this song deals fairly closely to the idea of the cycle of life represented by the flowing of water, and your band's name being Death Doula, meaning for me, to me, it means the assistant to welcoming death as opposed to life.
Mm. Well, let me just clarify one thing before I go
Sure.
into this, which is that the band is called Death Doula because when I broke my right wrist, I'm right-handed, I couldn't play guitar and I couldn't cook, which is my livelihood, and I couldn't really do much of jack shit at all, as anyone who has broken their dominant wrist or hand or arm knows. It's
Hmm.
incredibly debilitating. You lose your autonomy entirely. And so I had a session with a death doula, come to learn from a friend that death doulas can assist in the movement toward your own death or the death of a loved one that's pending. Like if you have like, terminal cancer, right? Or your husband or wife does. Also, they can guide you through the loss of something in your life, a job, a relationship, a pet. They
Hmm.
can also guide you through the experience of losing your autonomy. So if you lose a limb or you lose a job or you can't function in the way that you're used to. So for me, I named the group Death Doula after that experience, the session that I had with the Death Doula, because it felt like she gave me, or I attained permission in the meeting, the session that she and I had, to move on beyond guitar and really start using my voice as my primary instrument.
Hmm.
So, death doulas are certainly what you think of them as, and they're like also so much more. Um,
Wait, so a death doula is a real thing? I thought it was just like a
yes.
clever name.
Mm,
I
no,
had no idea.
it is that, and they're also real things. Just like a birth doula helps you with your birth,
Well, exactly. I mean, I
the
know what
birth
a
of your
doula
child.
is. Like I had a doula for my children being born. So that's why I was just like, oh, a death doula. Okay, so this is the opposite of life. This is like, someone to aid in your death.
Yeah, I guess you could call it the opposite of life. To me, like life and death are inextricably linked. They're the same thing. Like you're born just to die and all your life you're dying.
Hmm.
Like we have a limited amount of jing in our lives that is just being depleted little by little until the day comes, the calendar's counting down.
Right.
And I don't see that as morbid. And I don't see honoring and acknowledging that death is coming as like seeing the negative or being pessimistic. Like death is just a part of life.
Right.
But the death of an aspect of your life that you weren't ready to let go of can certainly be like a hard transition. So death doulas exist to aid in these time periods.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea.
Yeah, and I do see, yeah, it's cool. I do see um death and birth. as very watery, sort of swimmy experiences, whether that is like literal or metaphorical. And we all come from this like primordial ooze, and we all come from this like umbilical fluid. And when we're held the most in our lives, it's like by water, where we feel weightless and integrated and like we're one with nature. I think water, I'm also an Aquarius sun, so I'm the water bearer. So water for me feels like home. But I
Hmm.
think water is home for a lot of people. I think water is home for all people. I've always been intrigued by people who are afraid of water or don't know how to swim or whatever, because it's like, I don't know, it's like, what does that say about them, their psyche, their living experience? Like, it's just so intriguing to
Right.
me. I would love to like do like a study on them.
Hmm.
But yeah, to me, I mean, I was on the swim team and always a swimmer, always had a pool, like just love water.
I'm a
I love
Pisces,
that.
so yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Love a Pisces around here. Yeah, I love that Tori was inspired by water, looking out at the water, watching the like unending lapping,
Hmm.
everlasting lapping. Was there another question in there that I didn't get to?
No, it's just really that I was trying to see if there was a coincidence between um the idea that Tori was writing this song and kind of witnessing the circle of life through the movement of water. And then
Mm,
you're the band's name Death Doula, if there's some kind of connection there between those.
just that I think water is always going to be there at every life occurrence. It's going to be there at birth. It's going to be there all through your life, in a number of ways, that are potent and profound and integrated into the human experience. And then it's going to be there in some sort of, I think, maybe more metaphorical way at death. I like to think about death as like spiraling like a whirlpool, and
Hmm.
then you're just sort of in this other vessel, in this other space. But yeah, now that you know that death doulas are real, maybe that changes the question a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just, I mean, I guess from what you're telling me about it, I'm not totally off in thinking that a death doula is somebody that assists in death as opposed to assisting in life, where, because a doula is somebody that helps in birthing.
Yeah, a doula is somebody who helps in the transition of one thing to another. So it can be a birth doula or it can be a death doula.
Mm,
And I think birth doulas have been a little bit more
just coming.
common in the
Yeah, totally.
lexicon, in the zeitgeist, because I
Yeah,
guess just with the movement of like women wanting to like take their birthing experience back into their own hands and become more natural and more like
right.
with the way that women have done this for thousands of years. Like it's a little
Hmm.
bit like it's become pretty popular, pretty common, but it's the same with death. Like a lot of institutions have control over how and when we can die, and that is not natural. So
But
death
people also
doulas,
don't like to talk about death. People kind
mm,
of like rub up against the idea when we're talking about death because they
yeah,
just don't want to face it.
yeah. Yeah, and people think that like our sound is going to be like pretty metal. And like it's interesting to think about death in the context that it isn't metal and it isn't about black and it isn't about harshness. It's like just the ultimate freedom and like what we're all living for and what we're all dying for. And it happens for everyone, and it isn't morbid and it isn't, you know, wrong or bad. Like,
Right.
what if we can sing songs and make art about it in a way that isn't like fraught with fear? And I do think like one of the things that I write about is like loving life so much and loving this person so much that I don't ever want to die and I don't ever want it to end. And there's a lot to lose now.
Hmm.
And maybe a little bit that helps me release and like allow, because nothing lasts forever and I won't have it forever. And I have to come to terms with that.
Well, thank you for opening my eyes to that a little bit more. I definitely appreciate that, and I definitely will kind of look to that in my future needs if necessary, because it's pretty interesting. I think that's really cool, actually. This whole death
Totally.
doula thing. Um, So speaking of
Agreed.
Death Doula, I mean, congratulations on the release of your new album, Love
Thank
Spells.
you.
It's a great album. I really did like it, and that's why I'm speaking to you now. Because honestly, stuff comes across my desk all the time where I listen to it, and if I don't get, past 30 seconds, I don't do it. And
Hell yeah,
so,
as it should be.
well, yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, as a music journalist, which I guess is kind of what I am at this point, which is weird. Um, it's strange to be given things, kind of spontaneously, like out of nowhere, and just say, have someone give you something and be like, "Do you like this? Like, do you want to cover this? Like, do you want to write about this or read about it or whatever?" And so, I think you'd be happy to hear that your album is compelling. It's a good album, and it definitely, sucked me in, and I listened to all of it, and I really do like it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
what
you
is
so
the plan
much.
now? Tour?
The plan is, because Adam left right as we were making the record, we've really been spending the last several months because, it takes several months for the mixing and the mastering and the publicity and whatever happens after the studio time ends before the record actually comes out. So in that time, we've been basically seeking, finding, and training our drummer replacement.
Hmm.
And it hasn't been easy. And so we aren't like doing a proper full tour, but we want to. And after playing Portland last week in Seattle, I think we've proven that like Bobby's ready. We can do that. Definitely wanting to play out of town more often. We all kind of have jobs that are a little bit on the more flexible side because we want to be able to do this. But Kyle's job is probably the least flexible. And so we're just kind of working inside the parameters that we have,
Yeah.
for right now. Would love to like get linked up with the right booking agency or record label that's actually, centering music and art and valuing that and wanting to support a band that they think are really special and have something great going on that they want to, provide financial and community support for.
Hmm.
Um, we would love to accept the right offer from the right company, to help us achieve our dreams of touring and playing festivals and putting out more records and doing this, seriously. And we already are like doing it seriously, but it's hard to do it seriously and do a daytime full-time job seriously. So,
Okay. And so, and how do people purchase the album as of right now?
we have it at our shows on compact disc. We have it on Bandcamp. We have it on Spotify for listening. Um, and we are going to add the CDs to our website, which is deathdoulaband.com. And we also have really cool merch. I am a vintage picker and sourced like 25 t-shirts, unstained, no rips or holes, 100% cotton, really great quality, good feel broken in t-shirts from thrift stores and
Mhm.
yard sales. Washed those, screen printed those. They're
Oh,
gorgeous. I
it
did a little run with
it
bleach.
it lost its
Res
original aroma.
Yeah, we washed that dirty armpit right out.
Damn it.
Um, I did a little like 5 or 10, I think maybe more like 10 that are bleach dyed. So yeah, and those have been selling really well. So they're all one off. So it's hard because it's like we'll add the item to the website and then it'll be sold. And it actually has typewriter written lyric sheets. So you can
Mm.
read all my lyrics for all of our songs that I
Okay.
hand typed on our typewriter.
Nice. That's a pretty cool little, interesting and unique bit of merch.
Yeah, it's like liner notes, but
Yeah.
like, you know, on a website.
Right, right. But also like kind of more personal because it's like it's coming directly from you. It's not even like you're printing these out.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Typewritten and then just like scanned in and a whole page dedicated to the lyrics on the website.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right,
much for
Kerry.
chatting. Appreciate you. Glad we got a good reception
Yeah, we got it
situation
figured out.
finally.
Absolutely. Thank you for being patient with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, Kerry.